disappointment over the Myanmar military's decision to go through with the execution of 4 opposition activists. He said this would force ASEAN to reconsider the implementation of the 5-point consensus if such executions continue. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the 55th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Wednesday morning at the Soka Hotel in Phnom Penh, Prime Minister Hun Sen said that while the implementation of the 5-point consensus for Myanmar has not progressed, the execution of 4 opposition activists last week by Myanmar authorities made the situation even worse than before the 5-point consensus had been made. He said, Cambodia, along with all ASEAN members, is deeply disappointed and horrified by the execution of these opposition activists, despite I and other leaders calling for a reconsideration of the death penalty for the sake of political dialogue, peace, and national unity. In the event that any other prisoners are sentenced to death, we will be forced to reconsider our role in the ASEAN 5-point consensus. Myanmar military authorities reported on 25 July that it had executed 4 pro-democracy activists accused of helping carry out so-called terrorist activities, the first executions in Southeast Asia in decades. The 4 men were accused of helping the militia fight the Myanmar army that seized power in a coup last year. You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Hun Sen has expressed his desire to establish the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Secretariat to facilitate the effective implementation of the agreement, with Phnom Penh as the proposed Secretariat headquarters. EAC News reporter Dekanin has further details.
Speaking at the opening ceremony of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings on Wednesday morning at the Soka Hotel in Phnom Penh, Prime Minister Hun Sen called on the foreign ministers to discuss initiatives related to rehabilitation from COVID-19, with ASEAN having agreed to develop 4 strategies, one of which is to enhance the potential of ASEAN international markets and broader economic integration. He said he believes that in order to achieve these strategies, the region needs a regional comprehensive economic partnership secretariat to promote the effective implementation of the ASEAN agreement. He said Cambodia is ready for this RCEP secretariat in Phnom Penh and has prepared a detailed proposal. I hope that Cambodia can get the support of ASEAN member countries as well as other members of the ASEAN agreement when Cambodia formally submits its proposal. The RCEP agreement, which researchers see as beneficial to Cambodian and regional trade, took effect on the 1st of January 2022. Through this agreement, Cambodia will be able to export goods to 15 countries comprised of the 10 ASEAN members and 5 ASEAN partners, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, accounting for 28% of the world's total trade volume, and many major commodities in agriculture, agro-processing, and industrial goods will be allowed to be imported to these countries with an average duty exemption of more than 90% for Cambodia. In addition to the exports of goods, Cambodia will also benefit from other aspects of the agreement, including the transfer of technology, knowledge, and skills from foreign direct investments, as well as the creation of new jobs for people in Cambodia. According to a study conducted by the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, through this free trade agreement, Cambodia is expected to grow 7.3% year-on-year in exports, 23.4% in investment, and about 2% in overall GDP. Dekanin, EAC News.
You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. The ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights concluded its final report on Tuesday and submitted it to the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. In a press release issued on Tuesday, 2nd August, ICHR President Kyaw Remy confirmed that the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights had discussed, finalized, and approved the ICHR 2022 annual report and the ICHR Chairman's statement sent to the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. In addition, the priority programs and activities of ICHR 2023 were finalized for submission to the Committee of Permanent Representatives to ASEAN and the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting for approval. The statement further added, the implementation progress of ICHR's priority programs and activities was discussed with a thematic focus on children's rights, human rights, and the environment, trafficking in persons, business and human rights, the right to safe drinking water and sanitation, and human rights education. The meeting also deliberated on preparation for the 10th anniversary of the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration and the Phnom Penh Statement on the adoption of the AHRD, the ASEAN Human Rights Dialogue, and the 4th ASEAN-EU Policy Dialogue on Human Rights, which are scheduled to take place later this year. The ICHR session also included an annual meeting with ASEAN Secretary-General Dato Lim Chok Hoi. No mention of human rights cases related to Myanmar were included in this declaration. The ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights held its first special meeting in 2022 from Saturday 30th July to Tuesday 2nd August at the Cambodiana Hotel. The special meeting did not include Myanmar's human rights issues on its agenda. ICHR has, however, stated that it supports the ASEAN Declaration on Human Rights in Myanmar. Speaking to reporters on 30th July, the Director General of Administration and Complaints of the Cambodian Human Rights Committee, Uch Nippon, confirmed that the execution of anti-military government activists in Myanmar was not on the agenda of the meeting, but could still be discussed if raised by an ICHR member. You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi arrived in Taiwan on Tuesday night as part of her current Asia tour, making her the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit the island in 25 years. On Wednesday morning, she visited Taiwan's parliament to meet with Deputy Speaker Tsai Chi-chang, then went on to meet with President Tsai Ing-wen at the presidential office. While meeting with Tsai Chi-chang at the Legislative Yuan early on Wednesday morning, Pelosi was quoted saying, "We come in friendship to Taiwan, we come in peace to the region." Later at the presidential office, President Tsai Ing-wen presented Pelosi with the Special Grand Shu Ching-yun Medal in recognition of her contributions to enhancing exchange between the U.S. and Taiwan and for her long-standing support of the island. The Taiwanese president called Pelosi one of the island's most devoted friends and said, "Thank you for taking concrete actions to show your staunch support for Taiwan at this critical moment and for expressing the U.S.'s consistent policy supporting Taiwan's self-defense." Tsai further stressed that Taiwan would not be backing down despite heightened military threats from China. Pelosi emphasized that her delegation's visit to Taiwan was made to show support to the island and to make unequivocally clear that the U.S. will not abandon its commitment to Taiwan, saying the U.S. was proud of this enduring friendship. "Now more than ever, America's solidarity with Taiwan is crucial, and that is the message we are bringing here," she said, echoing her congressional delegation statement released on Tuesday night. Speaker Pelosi's visit comes at a time when relations between the U.S. and China have hit a particularly low point. It also defies the numerous stark warnings made by Beijing in the past few days, leading to soaring tensions between the two superpowers as China considers Taiwan to fall under its territory. Following the announcement of her arrival in Taipei, the Chinese Foreign Ministry issued a statement on Tuesday night saying that this visit is a serious violation of the One China principle and the provisions of the three China-U.S. joint communiques. Chinese state media also reported that China's military will hold drills near Taiwan from 4th to 7th August and had warplanes flying close to the median line dividing the Taiwan Strait on Tuesday before Pelosi's arrival, in addition to warships skirting close to the median line since Monday. China's retaliation to the U.S. visit also comes in the form of trade and exports, as its Commerce Ministry announced on Wednesday that it would be suspending sand exports to Taiwan, and Chinese Customs also announced that it would be suspending certain food imports from the island, specifically of some fruit and fish. In response to the heightened military threats, Taiwan's Defense Ministry stated on Wednesday that the drills conducted by the Chinese military violates United Nations rules and Taiwan's territorial sovereignty, blocking the island's air and sea and threatening its important ports and urban areas. The ministry said it has closely monitored and strengthened preparations and will respond appropriately in due time. Meanwhile, other countries in the region have responded with great concern over building tensions. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno expressed concern about the announced Chinese military drills in waters around Taiwan, as the maritime areas overlap with Japan's exclusive economic zone. An official from the South Korean presidential office has also called for dialogue to maintain regional peace and stability, saying, "Our government's stance is that we will maintain close communication with the nations concerned on all issues under the banner of the need for peace and stability in the region through dialogue and cooperation." North Korea, on the other hand, has vehemently denounced the U.S. visit, calling it an impudent interference and has expressed its full allied support to China. Speaker Pelosi and her delegation's public itinerary did not include a visit to Taiwan. Her next stops on the Asia tour are South Korea and Japan. However, so far Pelosi's only confirmed meeting in Seoul is with National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo. The South Korean presidential office has stated that it welcomes Speaker Pelosi's visit to Korea and looks forward to making many achievements during her meeting on Thursday.
请总统致辞，各位贵宾请就座。
President Tsai will now deliver.
បន្ទាប់ពីសម្ដេចអគ្គមហាសេនាបតីតេជោហ៊ុនសែននាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីនៃព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាបានអញ្ជើញជាអធិបតីភាពដ៏ខ្ពង់ខ្ពស់បំផុតក្នុងការបើកកិច្ចប្រជុំរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសអាស៊ានលើកទី55រួចមកនៅព្រឹកថ្ងៃទី3ខែសីហាឆ្នាំ2022នេះឯកឧត្តមឧបនាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីប្រាក់សុខុនរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីក្រសួងការបរទេសនិងសហប្រតិបត្តិការអន្តរជាតិបានអញ្ជើញចូលរួមពិធីប្រគល់រង្វាន់អាស៊ានឆ្នាំ2021ជូននាយកប្រតិបត្តិវិទ្យាស្ថានមេគង្គលោកបណ្ឌិតសូរិនវិជ្ជការក្នុងន័យនេះគឺជាការទទួលស្គាល់ការរួមចំណែកយូរអង្វែងរបស់ខ្លួនក្នុងការលើកកម្ពស់ការយល់ដឹងរបស់អាស៊ាននិងការពង្រឹងកិច្ចសហប្រតិបត្តិការក្នុងតំបន់ឆ្ពោះទៅរកការអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយចីរភាពនិងកំណើនសេដ្ឋកិច្ចជាពិសេសសម្រាប់មហាអនុតំបន់មេគង្គបង្កើតឡើងក្នុងឆ្នាំ1996វិទ្យាស្ថានមេគង្គត្រូវបានទទួលស្គាល់ថាជាកម្លាំងចលករមួយក្នុងតំបន់ក្នុងការពន្លឿននិងជំរុញការអភិវឌ្ឍអនុតំបន់ប្រកបដោយវិបលភាពនិងសុខដុមរមនាពិសេសក្នុងវិស័យកសាងសមត្ថភាពនិងការអភិវឌ្ឍសហគមន៍ប្រកបដោយចីរភាពសេចក្តីប្រាថ្នានិងការបដិញ្ញាចិត្តយូរអង្វែងរបស់វិទ្យាស្ថានដែលឆ្លុះបញ្ចាំងតាមរយៈការចូលរួមពីពហុស្ថាប័នក៏ដូចជាកិច្ចសហប្រតិបត្តិការឆ្លងវិស័យត្រូវបានផ្សារភ្ជាប់យ៉ាងស៊ីជម្រៅជាមួយនឹងសហគមន៍អាស៊ានដែលរួមបញ្ចូលនៅសកម្មភាពដ៏ស្អិតរមួតនិងភាពធន់ក្នុងន័យនេះលោកបណ្ឌិតសូរិនវិជ្ជការក៏បានប្រាប់នាយកព័ត៌មានរបស់ទូរទស្សន៍ជាតិកម្ពុជាយ៉ាងដូចនេះថា
The first time, as for the major that you come to Cambodia and your name.
My name is Suriyan Vichit Lekan. I'm the Executive Director of Mekong Institute based in Khon Kaen Province, Thailand.
How do you feel when you got the ASEAN Prize for 20 and 21?
It's really an honor to Mekong Institute and myself. And this is certainly a prize to all of us for our hard work, our dedication to the development in the Mekong sub-region, and also we hope to be able to contribute to overall ASEAN community building. But with the excitement and pride, at the same time we also feel that we are now pressured by the expectation, the duty and responsibility that we need to help the countries to promote the ASEAN community. Well, I think it's really a surprise to me that after 2.5 years that we experienced COVID, and this is considered as one of the major events. Although this is not yet summit, but this is the foreign minister meeting, which is second to the summit. I think Cambodia has shown that Cambodia is really ready and capable of handling the big events. I'm sure that it will be even more excited to see in the upcoming ASEAN Summit in November.
ឯកឧត្តមប្រាក់សុខុនឧបនាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីក្រសួងការបរទេសនិងសហប្រតិបត្តិការអន្តរជាតិបានអញ្ជើញចូលរួមកិច្ចប្រជុំសម័យពេញអង្គរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសអាស៊ានលើកទី55 មានមតិស្វាគមន៍ក្នុងសម័យប្រជុំពេញអង្គរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសលើកទី55ឯកឧត្តមឧបនាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីប្រាក់សុខុនរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីក្រសួងការបរទេសនិងសហប្រតិបត្តិការអន្តរជាតិបានមានប្រសាសន៍ថានេះគឺជាថ្ងៃទី5នៃកិច្ចប្រជុំរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសលើកទី55និងកិច្ចប្រជុំពាក់ព័ន្ធហើយឯកឧត្តមបានចូលរួមកិច្ចប្រជុំពាក់ព័ន្ធនិងជំនួបរវាងរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសអាស៊ានក៏ដូចជាជាមួយនឹងតំណាងគណៈកម្មការអន្តររដ្ឋាភិបាលអាស៊ានផ្សេងទៀតរួចមកហើយផងដែរទោះបីជាសង្កេតឃើញមាននិន្នាការដែលគួរឲ្យព្រួយបារម្ភមួយចំនួននៅក្នុងតំបន់នាពេលថ្មីនេះក្តីឯកឧត្តមនៅតែរីករាយដែលផែនការសកម្មភាពពង្រឹងការអនុវត្តសន្ធិសញ្ញាស្តីពីតំបន់អាស៊ីហើយកិច្ចប្រជុំពេញអង្គនាពេលនេះក៏នឹងពិភាក្សាផ្លាស់ប្ដូរលម្អិតពាក់ព័ន្ធស្ថានភាពក្នុងតំបន់សកលរួមមានសហគមន៍អាស៊ាននិងតំបន់មួយចំនួនទៀតដែលកំពុងកើតមាននៅក្នុងតំបន់អាស៊ានក៏ដូចជាក្រៅអាស៊ានផងដែររួមមានសហគមន៍អាស៊ានលទ្ធផលសំខាន់របស់អាស៊ានឆ្នាំ2022ការស្នើចូលរួមរបស់ប្រទេសទីមួយខាងកើតលទ្ធផលទំនាក់ទំនងរបស់អាស៊ាននិងដៃគូនិងក្រុមការងារជាន់ខ្ពស់សម្រាប់ចក្ខុវិស័យសហគមន៍អាស៊ានក្រោយឆ្នាំ2025ដូចជាបញ្ហាក្នុងតំបន់និងសកលមានបញ្ហាវិបត្តិនៅមីយ៉ាន់ម៉ានិងសមុទ្រចិនខាងត្បូងក្នុងឱកាសនេះជាពេលវេលាដែលយើងអាចបង្ហាញប្រកបដោយក្តីមោទនភាពថាកម្ពុជាដែលពីមុនជាប្រទេសត្រូវទទួលរងការហុំព័ទ្ធនិងឯកោទាំងខាងនយោបាយនិងសេដ្ឋកិច្ចឥឡូវបានក្លាយជាប្រទេសមួយដែលកំពុងមានសមហរណកម្មខ្លួនយ៉ាងសកម្មនៅក្នុងរចនាសម្ព័ន្ធនិងនិមាបណ្ណកម្មតំបន់និងពិភពលោកនិងជាប្រទេសដែលកំពុងដើរតួនាទីយ៉ាងសកម្មដោយស្មារតីនិងស្មារភាពក្នុងគ្រប់កិច្ចការតំបន់និងនៅលើឆាកអន្តរជាតិនិងប្រកាន់ខ្ជាប់ជានិច្ចនៅគោលការណ៍ពហុភាគីនិយមជាមួយគ្នានេះដែរតួនាទីកម្ពុជាជាប្រធានអាស៊ានឆ្នាំ2022វាជាឱកាសដែលកម្ពុជាអាចបង្ហាញពីសមត្ថភាពខាងធនធានមនុស្សនិងហិរញ្ញវត្ថុក្នុងការរៀបចំព្រឹត្តិការណ៍អន្តរជាតិដ៏ធំបែបនេះប៉ុន្តែសន្តិភាពនិងស្ថិរភាពនយោបាយនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាគឺជារឿងដែលមិនអាចមើលរំលងបានការរៀបចំប្រព័ន្ធផ្សព្វផ្សាយទាំងវិស័យរដ្ឋនិងឯកជនក្នុងព្រឹត្តិការណ៍នៃកិច្ចប្រជុំរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសអាស៊ានលើកទី55និងកិច្ចប្រជុំពាក់ព័ន្ធដែលប្រារព្ធរៀបចំឡើងចាប់ពីថ្ងៃទី30ខែកក្កដាដល់ថ្ងៃទី6ខែសីហាឆ្នាំ2022និងពិធីបើកកិច្ចប្រជុំរដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសអាស៊ានលើកទី55ដែលនឹងប្រព្រឹត្តទៅនៅថ្ងៃទី3ខែសីហាឆ្នាំ2022ក្រោមអធិបតីភាពដ៏ខ្ពង់ខ្ពស់សម្ដេចអគ្គមហាសេនាបតីតេជោហ៊ុនសែននាយករដ្ឋមន្ត្រីនៃព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាគឺជាកិច្ចការងារមួយដែលចាំបាច់និងមានសារៈសំខាន់ដើម្បីចូលរួមចំណែកក្នុងព្រឹត្តិការណ៍នេះ
ខ្ញុំសូមនិយាយតែពាក់ព័ន្ធជាមួយនឹងការងាររបស់មន្ត្រីនៃក្រសួងព័ត៌មានជាពិសេសគឺពាក់ព័ន្ធនឹងការងារមជ្ឈមណ្ឌលព័ត៌មាននៃកិច្ចប្រជុំលើកទី55របស់រដ្ឋមន្ត្រីការបរទេសហើយនឹងពាក់ព័ន្ធជាមួយនឹងអនុគណៈកម្មការខ្លឹមសារខ្ញុំសូមបញ្ជាក់ជូនថាមកដល់ពេលបច្ចុប្បន្ននេះដំណើរការនៃកិច្ចប្រជុំនានាបានប្រព្រឹត្តទៅប្រកបដោយជោគជ័យនៃការរៀបចំខ្ញុំចង់និយាយបានថាជោគជ័យនេះមានន័យថាមជ្ឈមណ្ឌលព័ត៌មានរបស់យើងដែលមានអ្នកសារព័ត៌មានសរុប
Hello and welcome to today's special live from EAC News on the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting press conference, the second day. I'm Darshana Gauchen. So today concludes the second full day of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting at the Soka Hotel in Phnom Penh. Related meetings have been running in Phnom Penh since 29th July and will also continue until the 5th of August. This live today is covering the press conference on today's meetings, where we expect to hear a summary of all the talks that went down today, as well as what progress has been made so far. Yesterday, Prime Minister Hun Sen presided over the opening ceremony of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting and related meetings. In his opening remarks, he touched upon a number of key discussion points, including the ongoing conflict in Myanmar and ASEAN's disappointment over the Myanmar military's decision to go through with the execution of 4 opposition activists. In this regard, he said that ASEAN may have to reconsider its approach to the 5-point consensus if such executions continue. Prime Minister Hun Sen also expressed his desire to establish the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Secretariat to facilitate the effective implementation of the agreement in Phnom Penh as the proposed Secretariat headquarters. And the Prime Minister called on the foreign ministers to discuss initiatives related to rehabilitation from COVID-19 and also to enhance the potential of ASEAN's international markets and broader economic integration. At the end of yesterday's meetings, a spokesperson outlined the main points and conclusions from the plenary meetings of the foreign ministers, and they can be summarized as follows. First, regarding Timor-Leste's application to join ASEAN, the foreign ministers collectively urged to expedite this process, as the missions to assess Timor-Leste's eligibility have already been concluded. And the foreign ministers also praised the work of the High Delegation Task Force on ASEAN's vision for 2025, with a collective hope that the task force will be able to provide forward-looking but still practical recommendations that reflect current situations. Prime Minister Hun Sen also urged this task force to meet with leaders about guidance on what to put in their agenda. 6 countries acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with Southeast Asia. These countries are Denmark, Greece, the Netherlands, Oman, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The spokesperson clarified that acceding to this treaty is the minimum requirement to become an ASEAN partner, and the UAE and Brazil will become sectoral partners in the near future. The meetings also endorsed a number of documents, but the spokesperson did not go in much detail, as we will know about them in later press conferences and releases. And on Ukraine, the foreign ministers all agreed to exercise utmost restraint and de-escalate any tensions, and also to respect sovereignty and territorial integrity, urging all sides to engage in peaceful dialogue. And on the South China Sea, the foreign ministers also urged all parties to resolve issues peacefully based on international law, urging all parties to implement the DOC and to also try and conclude the COC as soon as possible. The spokesperson said that everyone acknowledged that current geopolitical rivalries has made discussing this issue much more difficult, but everyone is hopeful that a peaceful dialogue can be achieved. And on the topic of Taiwan, the foreign ministers have all expressed concern over the growing attention on the Taiwan Strait, and all hope that all sides involved will de-escalate tensions and also engage in dialogue in a conducive, constructive environment. And the spokesperson stressed that Cambodia firmly abides by China's One China principle. Then the spokesperson concluded by mentioning the recently announced and appointed minister delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Kao Kim Hoon, as the new Secretary General of ASEAN starting from 2023. So today's meetings involved a number of ministerial meetings, including the ASEAN +3 and with many other countries. So now we will go to our correspondent on the ground, who is at the Soka Hotel, to ask him a little bit about what has been going on today. Hi, Anthony. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're at the Soka Hotel today for our foreign ministers' meetings.
Hi, Anthony. Yeah, it's really great to hear.
We're running pretty late today. Sorry.
Oh, yes, Anthony, I can hear you
so
now.
we're running late. We had the foreign ministers, and we had a lot of the foreign ministers with importance today. We had Servov from the Russian foreign minister, Wang from the Chinese minister, and of course Anthony Blinken from State Secretary of the United States all have their meetings today with foreign ministers, but also we had the Plus associates also included in these meetings. So we had the Foreign Minister from Australia, from New Zealand, India. So it's been a very busy day today with all these foreign ministers. So we're waiting for the spokesman to come down now. The spokesman for the foreign ministers, Mr. Kong, is supposed to come down and explain and give us a press conference on what the meetings were about. So we're still unsure on what kind of happened during these meetings.
Yes, today definitely was a very busy day. Just looking at, the schedule for today's meetings included so many ministerial meetings with a number of ASEAN partners. And as you mentioned, that includes, of course, the United States, China, Russia, and many more. And I'm sure it must be really buzzing over there. And you did say that there hasn't been much information that's come out, but is there anything that, that you've been able to kind of surmise from your time there as you've been there since morning?
Nothing's really come much out of the foreign ministers on things that happen. But as we know, as we watch the news, there has been quite a lot of things that's happening at the moment, especially with the news we've just heard with China firing missiles over Taiwan. And of course, we're being reporters, we do hear this, we are talking about it, we are waiting for what's going to happen for the next step. We did hear also that China was supposed to have a meeting with Japan it was cancelled because of Japan being part of the G7, and that was mentioned that they stick by what the US stands. So the meeting was cancelled. So what was the outcome? And furthermore, we haven't been told. It hasn't come out to us yet. So we're all waiting to find out and hopefully get some news on the situation in the foreign ministers, if it was brought up, if it was spoken about. Of course, what's on everyone's been talking about the last few days, Myanmar, because of what happened there. Apparently, also there was some students that were shot and killed. Supposedly rumours from the junta, so we still don't know 100% on that. So maybe that might come up in today's press conference. So we're just waiting now for Kong Pong just to come down and explain on the meeting. So I'm sure because it's running pretty far behind, he's probably got a lot to say.
Yes, that's true. Today was a very, very busy day, and just to clarify also, it's all the foreign ministers who are there from these different countries, the ASEAN partner countries, as well as any other invited guests that are here today. And of course, as you mentioned, the subjects of Myanmar, Taiwan, those are all very hot button issues right now. And I think from yesterday's press conference, we could see that there was not much information that the spokesperson could provide us specifically on these subjects. And that is, as he said yesterday, likely because this regional forum may not necessarily address these issues directly. However, I will be, very excited to kind of hear what was discussed today, as you mentioned, given very recent developments, even just since yesterday. So that would be very interesting to hear, I think, if there will be any further mention or any further deliberation on what has been discussed on these subjects. So Anthony, I also just want to know, what has the scene been there? Because I think when we talked earlier, you mentioned that it's been busier than yesterday. Is that correct?
Today has been a very busy day, even there's a lot more reporters have attended today, and I think that's the main reason is because of the foreign ministers that have turned up for today's meetings. So it's, a lot of reporters have come to record that, find out what's happening. like I said, unfortunately, they haven't given us much on during the meetings. Also, what we do have to remember is there is an agenda. There is something at each meeting they have to talk about and get that. So it would be hard to talk about these other things that it's happening because they're talking about the nuclear freedom, make sure there's no nuclear arms in Asia. And, I'm sure the Myanmar thing come up, the global, to keep green and things like that. And of course, the Prime Minister has been very busy because he had also met with the Foreign Minister of Russia and China yesterday, and of course, and Blinken. So of course, he's been busy as well. So I'm sure the agenda they need to stick by because the meeting only goes for 2 days. So they've also got that agenda to also fit in, and hence probably why today's gone longer than it should have gone.
That's very true. I think all these sort of added issues that are going on right now in the region and also across the world have really added a lot of extra, context to these talks. But as you said, these talks often have, already fixed agendas, and trying to even sort of divert from that will really just add so much more time needed for these talks. So I definitely do understand why there may have been delays, and I am even more than curious to hear what some of the conclusions may have been from today. So as you were saying, there are a lot more reporters there today. I believe that's what you mentioned. Did you have any chance to speak to any reporters to kind of gauge maybe what everyone is most interested in hearing, like what kind of questions they may be posing to the spokesperson?
Yes, because we're in the press room, of course, we all talk to each other, we all feed off each other, hear what's happening, help each other with other things that are happening around the world. It's not just with the Russian-Ukraine and the China-Taiwan. We also talk about other things that are happening around the world with the global warming, also the floods, the shootings and things like that. And this is where we get to talk and find out more in-depth things, because some of these reporters were on site to witness these and to be able to report on these. So we have, and of course, yes, the buzz is what happened with Taiwan today. It is one of the biggest features of our talk today in the newsroom, is what is going to be the next step? What is America going to do? The G7 have said something. What is the G7 going to do? And what is China's next step as well? As the Prime Minister said in his opening, it's these countries showing their muscle. But how much muscle can we put up with as just other people? So it will be interesting, and hopefully we get some kind of answers from, or some ways of from the speaker.
Yes, that's very true. So much, as happens when you have a conference or a regional forum of this kind, there are countries from very different areas and also different backgrounds with different politics, different, their own national ideas. And it's very true that, as you mentioned, some of these countries too are part of the G7, and I think that really does add to very interesting dynamics, especially on where everyone falls within these issues, and I'm sure would lead to some productive discussion as well, at least I would hope. But again, as you said before, I don't think it would be really possible to stray too far from the fixed agenda, as it would take much longer to discuss all these issues. So it will be really nice to hear soon from the spokesperson on exactly what went down today and what discussions happened, and whether there was any sort of further progress made on discussions with especially like very relevant issues to the region, specifically Myanmar, also as an ASEAN member state, and of course Taiwan and other issues across the globe. So yes, all right then. Thank you, Anthony, for speaking with us right now. We hope that the press conference will start soon. Otherwise, we will catch up with you in a little while again, just to see if there's any updates.
Okay, thank you very much, Dashana. Speak to you soon.
Sure, okay, thank you, Anthony. So once more, to recap from yesterday's meetings. Firstly, today concludes the second full day of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting at the Soka Hotel in Phnom Penh, and the related meetings have been running in Phnom Penh since 29th July and will continue until the 5th of August. And this live right now is covering the press conference on today's meetings, where we expect to hear a summary of all the talks that went down, as well as what progress has been made so far. And yesterday, Prime Minister Hun Sen presided over the opening ceremony of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings. And in his opening remarks, he touched upon a number of key discussion points, including the ongoing conflict in Myanmar and ASEAN's disappointment over the military's decision to go through with the execution of 4 opposition activists. And he said that ASEAN may have to reconsider its approach with the 5-point consensus if such executions continue. And the Prime Minister also expressed his desire to establish the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Secretariat in Phnom Penh to facilitate the effective implementation of the RCEP agreement. And the Prime Minister called on the foreign ministers to discuss initiatives related to rehabilitation from COVID-19, with ASEAN having agreed to develop 4 strategies, one of which is to enhance the potential of ASEAN international markets and broader economic integration. And at the end of yesterday's meetings, a spokesperson outlined the main points and conclusions from the plenary meeting of the foreign ministers, and they can be summarized as the following. Firstly, regarding Timor-Leste's application to join ASEAN, the foreign ministers collectively urged to expedite the process, as the missions into the country's eligibility have been concluded, and they now need to produce an assessment so that the ASEAN Coordinating Commission can make a decision. And the foreign ministers praised the work of the High Delegation Task Force on ASEAN's vision for 2025, with the collective hope that they'll be able to provide forward-looking but still practical recommendations. And the Prime Minister Hun Sen, also urged for them to meet with leaders to seek guidance on what to include in their agenda. And 6 countries also acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with Southeast Asia, including Denmark, Greece, the Netherlands, Oman, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. And the spokesperson clarified that acceding to this treaty is a minimum requirement to become an ASEAN partner, and the UAE and Brazil will soon become ASEAN sectoral partners. The meeting also endorsed a number of documents which we have not yet gotten much details on, as it will be released in the future. And on Ukraine, the spokesperson said that all parties are urged to exercise restraint, de-escalate, and engage in dialogue while respecting international law, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. And he said the end of this war should be to benefit everyone across the region, not just Ukraine. And the South China Sea, the foreign ministers urge all parties to implement the DOC and to also try and conclude the COC as soon as possible. But the spokesperson acknowledged that current geopolitical rivalries has made discussing these issues more difficult, but they all hope for a peaceful engagement in dialogue. And on the topic of Taiwan, foreign ministers have, of course, all expressed great concerns over the growing attention in the Taiwan Strait, but all urged to avoid tensions, to de-escalate, and have talks in a very constructive and conducive environment. And, of course, he reiterated that Cambodia abides by the One China principle. And then the spokesperson also concluded by mentioning that the minister delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Kao Kim-hoon, is going to be the next ASEAN Secretary General in 2023. So today's meetings included the ministerial meetings with several ASEAN partners, including ASEAN Plus 3, with the People's Republic of China, with India, with the Republic of Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, the EU, Russia, and also the United States. And as a result, today's conferences have run quite long, I believe, because there have been so many ministerial meetings. And as we discussed earlier with our colleague Anthony Ellis on the ground, there have been a lot of geopolitical tensions in the region across the globe, a number of issues which have been sort of overlapping each other in this current climate. In addition to the pandemic, of course, there is the Myanmar crisis, which has been ongoing for a long time now, and also there has been the Ukraine-Russia war and Taiwan. So many issues to discuss, and I'm sure not enough time to, of course, go over everything. So I believe now, once more, we're going to try and catch up with our colleague on the ground who is at the Soka Hotel right now. So hello again, Anthony.
Hello, Deshana. Welcome back.
Hi. Yes, it's great to see your face
obviously
again.
still running quite late. It is now 20 to 8. Originally, the meeting was scheduled for 6 o'clock, and it was put back an hour to, and now it was supposed to be to 7:30, and we're still running late. There's no word when the meeting will start now, so hopefully it will start soon. So obviously, it's been a pretty busy day in these meetings today.
Yes, I'm sure. As you know, we've been discussing earlier as well. There's been so many ministerial meetings with so many ASEAN partners. We touched upon a few. There was the ASEAN +3, of course, ASEAN and China, and ASEAN and the EU, ASEAN and Russia, United States, etc. A lot of really big players who arrived last night, of course, for these meetings today. So I'm sure the room must be buzzing there.
It is, that's right. I think there was scheduled for 11 ministerial meetings today because of the plus. There's so many associates who joined these meetings today. So yeah, and I think expecting why we're late also, there was probably some extra questions asked in these meetings, especially with the three major foreign ministers, and to hopefully maybe clear up some of the things that's happening. So yeah, everyone's as buzzy as it now because it's getting close to the meeting, wondering why are we still running late. There's been no thing to inform us why we're running 15 minutes from our last time we were told that we're going to start. There's other reporters here all doing the same thing, try to report back and not understanding what's happening. So hopefully we'll get some kind of resolution soon.
Yes, I'm sure the room must be quite restless now with the several delays that are going on. But I suppose I can understand why there might have been delays. As you said, there were 11 ministerial meetings, and the spokesperson, of course, will need to be briefed on every single one, because I'm sure everyone in the room will be very excited and kind of climbing over each other to ask about what happened and the details of each meeting. And of course, I think in particular to these sort of hot topic issues we've been discussing so far. So I'm sure it's not an easy task to also be the spokesperson. So I think I understand why there may be delays. But as you said, I do hope that it will start soon. It will be very interesting to hear what he has to say, very interesting to see what kinds of conclusions were made today, and especially also if there will be further mention on some of these topics, which we are really looking forward to hear about, and which yesterday we were not able to really get so much from.
Also, I would have to give credit for the Deputy Prime Minister, who's the Foreign Minister as well, Praksakon, because he had to be for every meeting. So can you imagine being in every meeting with different delegates and have to talk and come up with different things? So we definitely have to give him credit for being here all day and listening and be able to hold every meeting. And also where we have been lucky, the spokesman, every day he's come down, he's also been very good and answered a lot of questions. Well, he's given us chance. He's given questions allowed to be asked. So it's question time yesterday went for over an hour. So he's given anyone who's got a question a chance to ask the question, and he comes back with an answer. If it's not what we like to hear, it doesn't always make a difference, but at least what they've done to help with reporters to report on what's happening has been fantastic.
Yes, that's true. As you said, of course, Deputy Prime Minister Praksakon has been attending all the meetings today. He must be the busiest person there at the conference, and I'm sure he must be very tired, but of course he has a very big task as the Foreign Minister of Cambodia, of course. And I mean, I think also too his role as the ASEAN Special Envoy to the ASEAN Chair on Myanmar, he has also a very unique position, especially when the issue of Myanmar has been discussed so extensively. So yeah, a very difficult task of his, as you said. And yeah, but I mean, I'm very glad to hear that you've been treated really well there, and all the reporters there have been treated really well. And yes, I do agree that yesterday's press conference, though it was long, I do think that it did go very smoothly, and that the spokesperson was very responsive to reporters and was really willing to take on all questions, whether from national or international press. And it was very interesting to see also, there were, of course, many questions about certain topics and sometimes also pushback, but the spokesperson was very open, very, well-spoken, and he really did give, as best as he could, the best summary of what had gone down in yesterday's meetings. So yes, once again, looking forward to hearing what he has to say today.
Yeah, that's correct. He can only tell us what he can tell us. Also, we do have to give credit for the Ministry of Information who have put this together to be able to do live through their network. Also, to let the photographers know when it was time to go upstairs to take their photos of the ministers and things. So it's been constant all day. The photographers have been up and down the stairs. We have to give them credit because they've also had to stay during the meetings and then come downstairs, get ready for the next one, then go through. Also, we do have to say thank you to the Soccer Hotel as well. They've kind of looked after us very well with the service. A fantastic lunch the last couple of days and breakfast. So nothing during this meeting, even as a reporter, they certainly have not wasted or not spared anything for us. On say, as behalf of a reporter, I would like to say thank you, because for looking after us is also a big thing. Because I was here from 5:30 this morning and we're still going. So as much of these reporters constantly back and forward, reporting back to their studios, not just in Cambodia, because we have nearly 700 reporters here, and today was the most. Also have to report to their networks overseas in Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, China, America, Al Jazeera reporters. So, all these reporters from all walks of life were here, especially today. So they have to give credit for what the ministry has done to make sure we've been looked after well. There's been no pressure on us on how we report, that we've been doing things on our own will, and it's been a great feeling, been a great buzz. We've looked after, we haven't been locked up, there's been air conditioning, there's been everything here, and we can come and go through the whole day as we like.
Yeah, that's really, really good to hear. You're very right. We do have to give this credit to the Ministry of Information, of course, for giving reporters the chance to do their own extensive coverage. And of course, as you mentioned also, for doing a lot of live streams and stuff for the ASEAN meetings in particular. It's really been very smooth running, especially given the extent of how big these meetings are and just how big this event is as a whole. So I think, yes, hats off to everyone involved in running these meetings very successfully so far. And, of course, hats off to the reporters as well, as you said, and to yourself, Anthony, for being there all day from very early, like the crack of dawn. You've been there. So, I mean, you guys are all really doing your jobs very well and really extensively trying to cover this event. So I, of course, take my hat off to all the reporters there as well.
Thank you, Dashana. And the guys are still buzzing. They're still putting their fingers to their laptops. The meeting was, the last time we did get told was at 7:30. Now it's like 10 to 8 and still no word. What I'm going to be looking forward to is to November, when the bigger meeting does, the ASEAN meeting with the Prime Ministers and Presidents come. So I'm kind of looking forward for that buzz and get ready to report that, because I think that more information will come to us a bit more clearer, because these are the people that make decisions. Foreign ministers can only make X amount of decisions, can only do so much, because they do have to get it from their boss, the presidents or prime ministers. So the next one, of course, as we know, is coming up in November. Not quite sure where it will be held. The last two that were held in Cambodia were held at the Peace Palace, so we're assuming that the third one, because this is the third time that Cambodia and Prime Minister Hun Sen has chaired the meeting, the ASEAN meeting, so we just think it will be at the Peace Palace. So I'm looking forward to that buzz, to be able to meet and rub shoulders with some of the big players of the world, Big Brother and Big Sisters and whatever from the ASEAN Committee. And of course there will be plus. Remember also yesterday we've mentioned that 6 other countries also signed on as associates to join the ASEAN. So it is getting quite big committee now. The ASEAN is growing and growing. The Prime Minister in his speech yesterday said it wants to be one big family. Yes, there's 10 original that are signed up. And unfortunately with Myanmar, with its, as the Prime Minister Hun Sen did say, is playing up a little bit, and we're family. And what family doesn't have a little bit of trouble? So he's put it down that one of the families is having a bit of trouble, so they need time out, so to speak. And hopefully they can get back on track and work things out in Myanmar and join the ASEAN family again.
Yes, that's very true, Anthony. I think that is a very important kind of key point about the ASEAN collective. It is that it is sort of treated like a family, and each member country also, it's very well respected that each country has its own sovereignty and territorial integrity, and they don't want to really overstep their boundaries. So there is this sort of very, deep understanding of self as well in the ASEAN community. So yes, of course, it is very much a family, but of course everyone respects each other's own boundaries, which I think really contributes to the strength of the union as well in Southeast Asia. And as you said, yes, with Myanmar, I think it has been made quite clear that even as times have gotten very difficult and there has been a lot of issues right now with the ongoing conflict, and especially with the executions that were recently conducted, still I think the ASEAN community have emphasized that they don't want to permanently ever remove Myanmar. It's more so about now trying to guide Myanmar into what will the future be, and trying to bring peace back to the country. So yes, you really did touch upon all the key tenets of the ASEAN family. And I think right now we'll say goodbye to you, Anthony, and hopefully soon the spokesperson will come and deliver his remarks. If not, we will catch up with you again in a little while.
Thank you, Darshana. I'll speak to you soon.
Sure, thank you, Anthony. Okay, yes, so we are still here today at the live stream for the press conference for today's meetings. So today concludes the second full day of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting at the Soka Hotel in Phnom Penh. And related meetings have been running in Phnom Penh since 29th July and will continue until 5th of August. And this live will cover the press conference on today's meetings. And we expect to hear a summary of all the talks that went down, as well as what progress has been made so far. Yesterday, Prime Minister Hun Sen presided over the opening ceremony of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings. In his opening remarks, he touched upon a number of key discussion points, including the ongoing conflict in Myanmar and ASEAN's disappointment over Myanmar military's decision to go through with the execution of 4 opposition activists. In this regard, he said that ASEAN may have to reconsider its approach to the implementation of the 5-point consensus if such executions were to continue. And Prime Minister Hun Sen also expressed his desire to establish the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Secretariat to facilitate the effective implementation of the agreement, with Phnom Penh as the proposed Secretariat headquarters. The Prime Minister also called on the foreign ministers to discuss initiatives related to rehabilitation from COVID-19, with ASEAN having agreed to develop 4 strategies. One is to enhance the potential of ASEAN international markets and broader economic integration. At the end of yesterday's meetings, a spokesperson outlined the main points and conclusions from the plenary meeting of the foreign ministers, which can be summarized as the following. Firstly, regarding Timor-Leste's application to join ASEAN, the foreign ministers collectively urged to expedite the process, as the missions into Timor-Leste's eligibility have been concluded and they need to now produce an assessment so the ASEAN Coordinating Commission can make a decision. The foreign ministers praised the work of the High Delegation Task Force on ASEAN's vision for 2025, and there is a collective hope that the task force will provide forward-looking but still practical recommendations that reflect current situations. And Prime Minister Hun Sen also urged them to meet with leaders to seek guidance about the important points to include in their agenda. And 6 countries acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with Southeast Asia. These countries are Denmark, Greece, the Netherlands, Oman, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Spokesperson clarified that acceding to the treaty is the minimum requirement to become an ASEAN partner of any form, and the UAE and Brazil will become sectoral partners in the future. The meetings also endorsed a number of documents which we have not received much information on yet, but we'll find out more about soon. And on the subject of Ukraine, the spokesperson said that all parties agree that everyone must exercise utmost restraint, de-escalate, and also engage in dialogue while respecting international law and sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. He said the ending is not just to benefit Ukraine, but also to address wider problems in the region and the world. On South China Sea, the foreign ministers urged all parties to resolve issues peacefully based on international law and urged all parties to implement the DOC as well as to try and conclude the COC as soon as possible. The spokesperson acknowledged that current geopolitical rivalries has made discussing these issues more difficult, but all sides hoped that a conducive, peaceful environment can be made to engage in dialogue. On the hot topic of Taiwan, the foreign ministers have expressed growing concern over the attention on the Taiwan Strait, and they hope all sides will de-escalate and avoid further actions to escalate tensions, and they hope that all will engage in conducive discussions in a peaceful environment. Finally, the spokesperson concluded by mentioning the recently announced appointment of Minister Delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Kao Kim-hoon, as the new Secretary General starting from 2023. So today's schedule included a series of ministerial meetings with ASEAN partners, including meetings with the ASEAN +3 foreign ministers and ministerial meetings with the People's Republic of China, India, Republic of Korea, Japan, and New Zealand, Australia, the EU, Russia, the UK, and the United States. And we expect to hear the details from these meetings today at this press conference, which has been delayed a few times now, but we really are just now waiting to see what the spokesperson will have to say and what conclusions were made on today's discussions. And what we are, I think, most curious also to hear is what the ministers might have to say about certain hot button topics that were brought up also yesterday, especially at the end of the day at the press conference in the media room. Many reporters were really eager to hear if there had been any progress made on discussions about Myanmar, and of course if there had been any discussions on Taiwan as well. So it'll be interesting to see if today's meetings there will be any more discussion on these topics and if the spokesperson will be able to share any more with us. And of course, as we noted before, I'm sure that there is a very fixed agenda for these meetings, so it may be likely that not much was discussed, but we will have to see what the spokesperson has to say first. So once more, this live is just covering the press conference on today's meetings, where we expect to hear a summary of all the talks that went down, as well as what progress has been made so far. Yesterday, Prime Minister Hun Sen presided over the opening ceremony of the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings. In his opening remarks, he touched upon a number of key discussion points, including the ongoing conflict in Myanmar and ASEAN's disappointment over the Myanmar military's decision to go through with the execution of 4 opposition activists. In that regard, he said ASEAN may have to reconsider its approach to the implementation of the 5-point consensus if such executions were to continue. Prime Minister Hun Sen also expressed his desire to establish the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Secretariat to facilitate the effective implementation of the agreement, with Phnom Penh as the proposed Secretariat headquarters. The Prime Minister called on the foreign ministers to discuss initiatives related to rehabilitation from COVID-19, with ASEAN having agreed to develop 4 strategies, one of which is to enhance the potential of ASEAN international markets and broader economic integration. At the end of yesterday's meetings, a spokesperson outlined the main points and conclusions from the plenary meetings of the foreign ministers, which can be summarized as the following. Firstly, regarding Timor-Leste's application to join ASEAN, the foreign ministers collectively urged to expedite the process as the missions into Timor-Leste's eligibility have been concluded. They need to now produce an assessment so the ASEAN Coordinating Commission can make a decision. The foreign ministers praised the work of the High Delegation Task Force on ASEAN's vision for 2025, and there is a collective hope that the task force will provide forward-looking but still practical recommendations that reflect current situations. Prime Minister Hun Sen has also urged them to meet with leaders to seek guidance about the important points to put in their agenda. And 6 countries acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with Southeast Asia yesterday. These countries are Denmark, Greece, the Netherlands, Oman, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The spokesperson clarified that acceding to this treaty is the minimum requirement to become an ASEAN partner of any form, and the UAE and Brazil will become sectoral partners in the future. The meetings also endorsed a number of documents which we can get in further press releases, information, so spokesperson did not elaborate much. On the subject of Ukraine, the spokesperson said that all of us agree that all parties are urged to exercise utmost restraint, de-escalate, and urge all sides to engage in dialogue, while respecting international law and sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. He said ending this war is not just to the benefit of Ukraine, but to also help all of us address wider problems as a result of this conflict. On the South China Sea, all parties are urged to resolve issues peacefully based on international law, and parties are also urged to implement the DOC and try to conclude the COC as soon as possible. The spokesperson said that they all acknowledge that current geopolitical rivalries has made discussing the issue more difficult, but all sides hope that conducive, peaceful environment can be achieved for dialogue. And on the hot topic of Taiwan, he said the foreign ministers have expressed concerns over the growing tension on the Taiwan Strait and hope that all sides will de-escalate tensions, avoid actions that may contribute to more tensions, engage in dialogue in a conducive, constructive environment, and the spokesperson also stressed that Cambodia still firmly abides by the One China principle. Finally, the spokesperson concluded by mentioning the recently announced appointment of Minister Delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Kau Kim-hoon, as the new Secretary General from 2023. Today's schedule included a series of ministerial meetings with ASEAN partners, including meetings with the ASEAN +3 foreign ministers meeting and ministerial meetings with the People's Republic of China, India, Republic of Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, the EU, Russia, the UK, and the United States. And we expect to now hear more of these details during this press conference from the spokesperson. And currently there have been several delays, so we have not yet been